There are a lot of leaders, especially in corporate America, they take on this persona or this identity of their role.
Been very approachable, but also very into their title.
Because it's truly not about, resting for 8 hours. It's really being happy in what you do.
I'm so excited for this conversation.
How's everybody feeling today?
I believe there's time for it, and there are going to be seasons in your life where
I know that I can do a damn good job.
I can be who I am, and as a leader.
So do not be afraid of collaboration.
As we're learning things, we're gonna make lots of mistakes.
It's for you to then continue to move around this space, to move around the world and navigate it.
You are right where you're meant to be. She don't work like that no more. And neither do you, sis. Neither do you. Because here's the truth. A lot of us have been spinning in the same orbit for years, working jobs that drained us, carrying families that leaned a little too heavy on us, building businesses that looked real nice on Instagram, but actually it's eating us alive behind the scenes. That's the survival burnout orbit. You know it. You felt it. Hell, I felt it. And the internet loves to sell us quick exits, right? Those ads sliding down your timeline, okay? That'll tell you to quit your job in 6 months, start your business today. The ones that say, here's one system that'll solve your whole life. I just said, we're layered. We got kids, we got husbands, we got families. How am I fixing my whole life in 6 months? And honestly, half of us can't even find the energy just to wash our hair. How am I going to build an empire in 90 days? Like, be serious. And that's why I created this space. This space is really a space for women just to be, right? Because the conversation around burnout isn't surface level. It's layered. Your kids, your body, your friendships, your boundaries, your money, your identity. And that's a sandwich. That's a lot. And nobody talks about that, right? Nobody talks about how it smushes itself together. Maybe they do, but it has not come across my timeline yet. Maybe I need to update my algorithm. Who knows? But today, we're talking to Cheyenne. We're kind of creeping up into her orbit a little bit. Cheyenne's story, let me tell you, if I only tell you how Cheyenne and I met, it's a crazy story, but it'll be for another day. But Cheyenne said it best herself. I ghosted myself for this role. And if you've ever abandoned your own health, your joy, your rest, just to keep showing up for a job or a boss or a cause that wouldn't even send flowers to your funeral, you're going to feel this one in your chest. Like, really in your chest. Cheyenne comes out of the doula world. And if you're a doula, you know what I'm talking about, right? That's a space where burnout isn't just about paperwork or deadlines. It's about bodies. It's about babies. It's about lives. It's about care work that runs so deep, right? That you forget to even care for yourself. And now she's in the messy, brave work of shifting into entrepreneurship and asking, how should I show up without disappearing on myself and the thing that I built to escape from the burnout of corporate? Crazy, right? How we pack things up and take it with us. This is the kind of layered real talk you won't see in them Facebook ads. This is the ecosystem that we're building here. A voice of the people. A space where women get to show up and say, I've lived this story too. Not just in a package way, but they get to say, I've lived it, and I don't work like that no more. So, with all that said, let's get into the episode. P.S. It's messy. It was filmed on Zoom. Forgive us, but it gets better. Season 2 is in the works. There's so much beautiful things happening, but enjoy the episode.
All right, guys, I'm so excited to welcome Cheyenne Bell, one of Massachusetts doulas. I'm so excited. She has become such a dear friend to me. I'm going to do a small but long spiel about who she is. She's a daughter. She's a healer. She is a cultural change maker in Massachusetts in and around everything healthcare, at least doula-based healthcare. She is a champion for equity and just all around wonderful human being. She is the eldest of, I think it's 9 or something like that. Eldest of 5 by her mom. But when I say such a nurturing individual, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with her today, talking about you are not your role, right? We know a lot of times in the birthing space, doulas tend to take on so many different roles, and sometimes you get lost in that. We're going to be presenting you guys with statistics. We're going to be looking back at all of the different survival patterns that we did in the series. And then we're also going to tie it all together, culminating into You Are Not Your Role, and give you guys some tips and tricks to keep yourself safe in the doula space. So without further ado, I want y'all to help me welcome Cheyenne. Welcome.
Thank you, friend. That's so sweet. I love it. I'm so excited to be here and talk with you on this very important, like, just in general, because I think it's so hard for doulas, and I think in any role really that you do, to separate yourself from the work that you do and remember who you are as an individual, as a person, and how you show up outside of the work that you do, even if you love your work. Because I love my work. I'm so thankful to be a doula. I think this is like the best thing that's one of the best things that ever happened to me, and be able to support families the way I have been able to do. But I think it's really important to talk about that distinction of who you are outside of the work that you do. So I'm really excited to talk about this.
Yes. So, I mean, I know I just told the folks a lot about you. So I might be a tough act to follow. But can you just tell the people a little bit more about you, about Haven Place Doulas, and like really how you support the Massachusetts community, particularly, moms of color. You support all moms, right? But you also lead this major coalition around equity in the doula space, particularly for moms of color. So I'm really excited for you to talk to the folks about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, like, I want to assume everybody knows what a doula is. So a doula, we are a non-medical support for families that are pregnant, get ready to give birth, and postpartum period, and then somewhere in between, anywhere of that. There's doulas for like everything, but our support is based in being non-medical. So that's physical, emotional, mental support. We teach advocacy and things to the families to kind of help them around this birthing and postpartum space, so that they can have the most information that they need to make informed decisions for themselves and then the babies they represent. So that's kind of like what doulas do. And I mean, that's a short version of what doulas do. Norlander alluded to sometimes we end up in other roles in our role that end up taking on these other type of duties. And it's, a very delicate balance to stay in our lane and the work that we do. And at Haven Place Doulas, there's a group of us doulas that are together that do that work. So we support the families, and most of the families that we serve are families of color or international families as well. So that's a lot of the group that we serve, and then we serve everyone. But those seem to be the majority of the clients that we do. And really, my passion of starting Haven Place Doulas was because the disparities that is in specifically Black maternal health. And that's like kind of where my passion is helping Black moms and however else they might identify with their nationalities, but to be able to advocate for themselves and to feel like their voices are heard in a space where statistically we know our voices are not heard. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And that's kind of why I started Haven Place Doulas as a hub for families of color to find doulas of color so that they can get the support that they need. And then I work with the Massachusetts Doula Coalition, which is really around support and advocacy for doulas and like trying to help with policies and stuff that will help access for families, but also for sustainability of the doula workforce, because ours is newer in the sense of the term than it is in the work, because our work has been around forever. Like doulas shown up as moms, sisters, aunts, cousins in the birthing space, even if they're not called doulas, and it's not something that's used all around the world. People have different names. We're used interchangeably as midwives, although we are not midwives, but people confuse us. So like there's a whole thing to kind of, I don't want to get into all of that, but like that is something that I'm also passionate about, is trying to help sustainability within the workforce for those who are coming in as new doulas and those who are been douling for a while now.
Oh, I love that. I so love that. And I want to transition us into why this conversation matters so much, especially for people in the doula space. I know at the very top of the conversation, I alluded to like the burnout effects, right? Of what happens in the doula space. And you and I had this wonderful conversation this afternoon about the statistics around, the burnout rate for doulas, which we'll touch upon much later in the conversation. But I want to start by saying thank you so much for coming to have this conversation, particularly around you as a woman who transitioned out of corporate culture into the doula space, right? I know from talking with you, you left corporate culture because it gave you like high burnout. It felt very self-sacrificing and not fulfilling, and you left to pursue your passion, right? But I really want to ask you, like, from your perspective, right? Why did you transition into such a high yielding space that yields burnout, even though you've left the culture of burnout?
I love that question. It is. It's like jumping from, what do they say? From
the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you can kind of get into with doula work, is you get so consumed in the families and the work that they're doing. And a lot of the families are very high needs. They need a lot of supports in different ways. And where in the corporate space, at least you have like, you have business hours, you're 9 to 5, you clock in, you clock out, your work should be done, right? Some people are still working beyond that time, but for the most part, that's like the expectation, the standard around what that looks like. And in the doula space, it is not that. We would love to have normal business hours, but birth waits for no one. Birth is going to happen when it's going to happen, especially if you're a birth doula. So like, it's been hard, to be honest, to try to figure out that balance and how to navigate keeping boundaries and time constraints and still honoring the space of like how unpredictable a birth is and the different sensations and things like that. But like I felt like I had to move to this because this is like where my heart has always been calling me. Every other job I've been doing, I haven't felt fulfilled. My mom likes to joke that I've had multiple careers over the different kind of things, because I worked in HR, I was a teacher, I worked for a nonprofit, I was a pharmacy technician. So very like all of these are careers that I could have made a whole thing out of. But then when the doula calling came, which is what a lot of doulas say, they were doing something else, and then the call came to become, and then they just kind of jumped all in. And so for me, that was something I'm always known as what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be when I grew up. And when the opportunity came, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what it is. But I did not understand the other aspects beside the passion of the work.
I know. So like I know this topic is really, and the topics that we've been discussing throughout the series is like people who have been under these types of wounded leadership, right? And for me, there are a lot of leaders, especially in corporate America, they take on this persona or this identity of their role. And I find it very interesting that potentially I'm not sure what your experience has been being under a leader who's like assumed this, assumed the identity of his role now into transitioning like, oh, I myself potentially am carrying those, patterns with me. And I guess my question is, I have a two-parter. So the first question is, tell us a little bit about your experiences being led under somebody that potentially, right, might have assumed their role in corporate America. And like the second question would be, how have you yourself, tried to disrupt that mindset or interrupt rather, that mindset as you've transitioned, into owning your own business?
So the first, like the leader, I mean, I think in all the roles I've had as my managers, supervisors have always been very much, I don't know, how do you say, very much like, I feel like they've been very like approachable, but also very into their title, like, wanting to use that as like the methodology for lack of explanation or lack of follow through or what have you in whatever assignments that I might have been given or expectations that might have been done. Um, I think, oh yeah, this is great. I think that, you know, sometimes being a leader, we forget that, the people that are working under us also have lives outside of this business and the work that we're doing. And it's almost as if something is wrong with you if you are not available for them, or if you need to call out or take a day off and take a day of rest. And me in my role now as like the founder of Human Place Doulas and like some of the doulas that I have with me, and even for myself, is try to be intentional about rest and trying to ensure that I take time for myself, and then also encouraging the doulas that if they are, when they are doing work, to make sure they're taking time for themselves and remember to take a vacation, because right now we all work for ourselves as contractors, but really thinking about that rest to protect us from burnout if we could. And then remembering that besides being a doula, we are still, as you had described, sister, maybe a mother if you have kids. I don't have any kids, but like we have all these other roles that we play and who we are that make us this well-rounded person, that our job is not, it's not our only function. And I like this. We're the only one you're useful. And that's how I felt in a lot of roles. Like if I wasn't being useful, then they'd be like, okay, well, we need to move you or have you do something else, get reassigned or whatever, or like getting these kind of what used to irk me so much was like the performance reviews, and when the way they would come down and be like, well, what are you talking about?
The projection.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like this is not who I am. And if you would only see beyond the I'm available or the be excellent, right? And it's like, sir or ma'am, you're human too. You know what I mean? You're human too. So I need you to stop embodying this whole title of who you are and understand that I am beyond my title too, and see me as a human just like you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're like, oh my gosh, like now I've transitioned and I've realized that I've inherited some things, and I am definitely trying to really hold myself accountable to not, performing. So like, I like that we just talked about me, because I love to share a good screen, honey child. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And like we're having the conversation around, we are inheriting that we can fix everything. And like, even though we are not okay, right? Even in your capacity as doula, you're like, listen, I gotta learn how to set boundaries, like I am not superhuman, at least in my role. And I left corporate because my boss, the wounded leader, thinks, I can fix everything and I am always available and I'm always excellent. And that's not the reality. I love that you are talking about, truly not being a fixer, because then they put you on these performance reviews and it's like, you want me to fix myself, but sir, you're not fixing you.
Like in the mirror, okay?
We had another guest here, Marie. She said, you need to humble yourself. Okay. And then realize that the change starts with you, and that leadership needs to understand that, like, if you are carrying around this fix it culture, like that's not true reality. And I like that you are touching upon the fact that we can be human and it's okay to be soft. Because I mean, for me, implicitly in the conversation that we're having here, you left all of these in my mind. Because in the medical field, they will call your jobs like gritty jobs. Like those are like jobs that are on the ground, boots on the ground. And you left it to be more, I would say, soft living, but it's not really soft, right? It's like, you know what I mean? It's not really soft, but it's the softer of the two, because like you're working with babies and you're working with your passion. So I really am enjoying, hearing you talk about your passion in that way, and how it truly is making you feel as though you're not burnt out. Like you feel as though you can wake up every day, right? And not feel like, oh my God, I am exhausted from this job. Because it's truly not about, resting for 8 hours. It's really being happy in what you do.
Yeah, I agree. When you have joy in your work, it doesn't feel like work. And so in the work that I do, I don't necessarily feel like it's work. I actually am sad when a contract ends and I say goodbye to a family, which is what I had to do earlier today, because our work is done. It's bittersweet. I'm glad that, they felt really supported and that they are now off to continue being parents and taking care of their babies. But it's very hard to let go. And I think in any of the roles we hold on to, especially when we've been working on this project for so long, or we're leading something and then it's over with and we're done, and then it's like, well, what do I do now? Like, this is until the next kind of thing comes along. And that's something in some of the roles, especially the administrative type roles that I've done, I've always felt like I had to jump in from one to the next project to be useful or and fixing things and all of those. And I think it's important, even if you are in your job and you do love what you do, that you make sure you, at the end of the day, when you clock out, that you let your work stay there and go home and be with whomever you're at home with. Or even if you're by yourself, then go home, be by yourself and enjoy your time and doing things that you enjoy, to kind of pour back into yourself when you're on all day. And then, now it's time to unplug and just kind of release whatever you've been holding on to. That's kind of what you said, made me think of.
I love that. That's such beautiful advice. And I think what it makes me think about is like, being that you're in a doula space, and we're only making it doula specific, but I'm going to say this for the people in the chat, which is, you can use these things, globally. So the question I would have for you is, for doulas in this industry, what are some signs to look for as a doula that you are embodying your role too much, to the point where it's going to burn you out? Because you and I talked about statistic of doulas being fully burnt out and they quit after like 2 years, right? And now that you are on the cusp of that 2 years, you've been doing this for 5, but you're on the cusp of that 2 years, and it seems like you're gonna, transition and go for more. I am just wondering, what signs should folks look for so that they can actually, try to create an intervention to stop those signs?
Yeah, I think for me, what ended up happening is I ended up feeling like trapped, for lack of a better word. And it's when I had like my first year of doing this to work full time, and I felt like I couldn't do anything else. Like I needed to be around. I couldn't have a social life. I couldn't go places or plan concerts or things like that. And I think at that moment when I felt like I was kind of locked into my schedule and like glued to my phone, that I realized I need to reevaluate my boundaries, my time. And like I had to talk to another doula that's been doing the work longer than me, like 20 plus years. And I was just, talking with her, and she kind of said, it's okay for you to take a vacation, go away for the weekend. She's like, that was okay. And I didn't realize I was like waiting for permission to do that. uh, which is wild to me because I work for myself. So really, I didn't need anyone's permission. I could just go and do it. But I did until she said it. She was like, you just have a conversation with your client and say to them, that I'm going to be away, or I'm going to be an hour or so away this weekend. And, are you feeling any signs of labor? Like kind of really asking your clients that, and then making plans around that, and then having your built-in backup systems in place. And like really my thing for me was always that rest. And I think that might contribute a lot to the doula burnout, is that we don't have time for ourselves, that we're glued to our phone. We have this 24/7 lifestyle where we're on call all the time. And I think that that's kind of like where I was at. And then yeah, I think everything you put here on the slide actually is exactly what I was feeling. Like exactly that. And it was shocking, right? Because I never had that experience before when I was working in the corporate type setting. Because I always do, oh, I would request this time, I have PTO and I can use this, that, whatever, and just kind of make plans for vacations that way. And then just praying that my PTO got approved. But now in this space, working for myself, and where I'm setting my hours, I'm setting the scope of the work, I'm setting all of these different things, and then not knowing the balance, because all that was always made for me, kind of like, this is what you're allotted, this is when you can use it, this everything was kind of told to me. And I was like, all right, cool, a little on the little rat wheel and just circling around. And now that I'm outside of it, myself running everywhere I can go on my own. And now it's like, how do I do that for myself and like set those boundaries? And that's something I'm working on, and I'm getting better, which is why I'm excited that I'm now moved into my 2 years, and I'm gonna like, I'm still here, I still want to go, I still want to keep doing the work. So I figured out a little bit of something, but I know I have more work to do, because I still have moments where I feel like a little stuck, a little guilty when I take some breaks, when or if I'm not like at the beck and call of my client, that I'm not answering fast enough, or all of those things. I still have those moments of guilt. But I like you said, Norlander, I'm human. I'm allowed to not be by my phone, and to have been sleeping, or to have been resting, or eating, going to the bathroom. It's okay that I did that.
Yeah.
That's
You said something so powerful. So you said two powerful things, which I think is so amazing. One is, as you transition into working for yourself, how important process is. And you didn't realize, like, like, oh, that process was being done for me. Right. So like now I have to build that process in for myself. And I think that that is some beautiful advice to offer in the doula space. And it's not only contracts, it's not only administrative work, it's also building in the rest, building things so that it's sustainable, making sure that you have on-call backup, setting expectations, and not just setting, but also managing expectations, because that's also a skill. And I think that that is some very powerful advice that you offered. Another thing that I love that you offered in the conversation is that it's okay to be human, right? And like to be human is to be imperfect.
Yes.
And I think, especially in the doula space and the medical space, you're expected to be this expert. And like, that's great, but you need to learn how to be an expert of you. And being an expert of you is understanding that because you are in evolution, right? Or because you are evolving, You get to be a learner about yourself all the time, and that is completely okay, and I think what I'm hearing that you've learned in this process is that, you've learned to accept the imperfections and grow with them, which is just very powerful.
It took me some time to get there, though. I won't lie. I wasn't there for a while because I'm my worst critic. I beat myself up so much. Especially like the first birth that I missed. I was devastated. Like I didn't give myself any kind of grace. And the only reason why I missed it, I was sleeping. Like I fell asleep in my phone and I didn't hear it going off. And like, you know, but that was a human thing. I needed to sleep. Like I needed to sleep, but it was so rough and it took time and talking to other doulas, some who've been in the space longer than I, to really, help me to forgive myself for making a mistake. That was not really a mistake. It was just a human thing that I needed to do. And I think as whoever with the doulas, as you're going through and you're figuring out your things, it's okay to make mistakes or to do human things. Like if your phone dies, like, it's not the end of the world. The phone will die. Like,
it's technology. It's technology. It's technology. It's gonna tech. The tech's gonna tech. Okay.
Exactly. You don't know where your charger is. You don't even, your signal's out because you're in the trees or something. Like, things can happen. And I hope that the families you're working with would give you grace that things can happen. Granted, yes, they brought you on because they want your support. They want you to be there. They want you to be a part of this, one of the greatest moments of their lives, but also you're human and like things can happen out of our control, even if we have good intentions around it.
Yeah. And like another powerful thing I want to lift. So there are more things that you're saying that's powerful that I want to lift up, but at least in this segment, and then I'll transition, which is the importance of community, right? And the creation of community. And I'll tell a quick story, guys, about how Cheyenne and I met. We met searching for community through a program called Real Roots. And now Cheyenne is my boo. I can't, you know what I mean? We talk almost every day. So, the importance of community, because I was ready to pack up and go back to New York. You know what I mean? I'm like, I am finished with, where I am in Massachusetts. And the importance of how community can help you think about, growing as a person, growing as a leader, growing through those transitional pains as you move out of corporate. I think it's very important because you literally just said as well, you have the support of another doula, and don't be ashamed, right? Like, I know in corporate, there's this shame around asking for help, right? There's this shame around being perfectly imperfect, right? Because they don't recognize perfectly imperfect. You're always available. You're always excellent, right? You're always the fixer. You're always the performer. And the performer, as we transition, does things to you, right? So it does things like create exhaustion, like which we've covered. But Cheyenne just talked about how angry she was with herself. She talked about the resentment, right? And the loss of self. And that one is a huge one for me because I see a lot of women go through that as they're transitioning. It's like, oh, you are mad with them, but you also mad with yourself, and you're not even there anymore. And then, you're showing up in a capacity for your clients, particularly in the doula space, with this, authentic connection because legitimately, you know what I mean? You're in this intimate, holy, sacred space, but you have to perform, but you're just exhausted and you don't know why you're exhausted. And it's really important to have community, to have those conversations so women like us can tell you, oh, girl, you're not just exhausted because you ain't sleep for 10 hours. You're exhausted because you're not setting no boundaries. You're exhausted because you're performing to be available, to be excellent, to be all these different things, to be dependable. And then you're creating an unhealthy codependency, right? And like you're stuck in cycles. And Cheyenne very well named that at the top of the call, where she left corporate America and she felt like she was stuck in a cycle, even though she was trapped. She used the beautiful analogy of, being on the hamster wheel of things created for her, but then she went into her own hamster wheel herself, creating the same system in a new name. But now, because she has learned to step into her own wholeness, right, of like consistently understanding that I am growing, I am learning, I am healing, right, I can legitimately show up differently because I recognize these parts of me need healing and need growth. So I just want to say I appreciate the context that you're bringing into the space. It's really very beautiful, beautiful, particularly for doulas. I guess that brings us into the next part of like moving from, your role from performing, presenting into like belonging and essence, right? Like practicing how to be enough. And that brings me to my next question for you, Cheyenne. I know it's really difficult. This is a very like, I don't want to say it's a loaded question, but it's a very like a profound question. You know what I mean? It's profound in such a way that it may not be able to be answered. But like,
Oh, I love it. Give me the challenge. Why not?
but when did you know that you had stepped into your wholeness, or at least begin to step into your enoughness as a doula? Meaning, like you started setting those boundaries. Like how, like what do you have a feeling? Is there something in your gut? Like, what starts to happen when you start stepping into yourself in that way?
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. I think for me, that came to mind while you were talking, was the moment when I realized that I wasn't gonna be able to do this work anymore if things stayed the same. And it had come for me when I had two back-to-back births that were like 3 days of time that I was there with the families. And that's not on the families at all. Like, birth happened and it took some time for things to pick up and all those things. Like they couldn't control that. That's not like an intentional thing they put onto me. But I was thinking of myself long term. I was like, if I have more births like this, I'm not gonna make it. That was like almost I think my 1 year into doing the work full time. And so when I got to that point is when I really started reaching out to my community and talking to some of my doula friends and kind of saying to them, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this work anymore. I'm exhausted. I've had two back-to-back births and they were 3 days long and all these kind of things. And I was just like, I don't know how to do this. And she kind of said to me, she's like, what do you mean there were 3 days? And she's like, what do you mean you were there for 3 days? I was like, I was there for 3 days. She was in labor. She called me. I came. And she was like, let me tell you another alternative.
It was like, hold on, sis. You did what now? You did what?
And she was a little confused. She was like, what do you mean you were there for 3 days? I'm like, I was there for 3 days. And she was like,
you're over here manic. You're like, oh my God, I haven't eaten, I haven't showered, I haven't peed. Help me.
I'm sleeping in a chair. My back hurts. Oh my gosh.
My legs are swollen. Oh God.
When is baby gonna come? I'm so tired. Like that's where I was like, I can't do this no more. I was like, I cannot. So I'm so thankful to God that like I just happened to be having conversation with her, and I was just kind of I was kind of venting, not that I didn't want to do the work, but I was just how I felt. And then she was like, here's another way.
Yeah.
Why don't you try this? Set this kind of boundary in place. And I didn't know I could do that, and I think because up to that point I was kind of in my own little silo doing the work. I didn't really have too many doulas I was interacting with, so I was slowly building community, which, like you were saying, is really important because the community will share things with you. Now, of course, there are some people in the community that might be doing the same work as you who are going to be gatekeepers and not going to share nothing with you, or make you have to jump through hoops and ladders or things like that. But then there are those who are for you, and it takes some time to find that, because it took me time to find the doulas that were for me, that were willing to help and support me, didn't feel like they were in competition with me, and that they didn't have the scarcity mindset. So I think from them modeling this wholeness mentality and way of approaching our work helped me to do that. And then picking up pieces from them and what they were doing, how they've been sustaining themselves and boundaries and things that they had in place, that I was like, oh, I need to do this. And I implemented it right away.
Yeah.
And you can fully understand how it works, but I was like, yes.
No, no more, no more, no more.
Absolutely not. I was like, I'm done, you guys. I'm done. And then, my clients, the ones I had before I put the policy in place, were a little taken aback, that the change, that I brought to them. And I was like, this is why I'm doing this. I hope you understand, like, for me to be able to be a full on support for you. And then they got it. And then it worked well in their favor, worked great for me. I wasn't there. I wasn't doing more than like a day and a half type births now. Depending on how things are going. Sometimes I'm not even there more than 10 hours. So it's been a lot more manageable, what my doula friend had taught me in that moment. And then I've adapted it as I've had more and more experiences, to where now I'm like, all right, great. Now I'm moving forward a little bit. I'm showing up differently. I feel like I have more passion and excitement now with my clients of the work, because I'm like, all right, these are my boundaries already in place. This is how we're going to work through this. And then there are people, of course, who want to try to get around the system and try to finesse their way around what you set. But you got it. Yes. Thank you, friend. I was like, what's the word? I was literally saying, what's the word?
Yes.
But you got to stand firm in it. Once you make it, you wrote it down, you have them sign off on it, and then you just abide by the contract. Per the contract, this is how this looks. And if they're not happy campers, then that's okay. Then not everyone's for you. And like you said to me, friend, somebody just gotta let that money walk. You just gotta let it walk.
Because not all money is good money. Because
Exactly.
not all money is good money. Your nervous system matters than the dollar sign.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So many powerful things in what you just said. And I kind of I want to sum it up from my end, right? Which is the one, you keep mentioning the power of community. That's always going to be top tier. But what I really enjoyed you saying is, look, I have to have a process. I need to stand firm in my process. So it's not just setting boundaries, right? It's the skill of the communication of the boundary, right? I really love that you nailed that down, because some people don't know, it's really difficult to communicate and hold the boundary. Those things are definite skills. And I think my next question is going to be for you. It's how did you do that? Right? How did you learn, Cheyenne? One, because I know it's difficult to do it in your personal life, and it's different from how you do it in your personal life, and it's different for how you do it in your business. So I'm only asking for the business piece, which is, how have you yourself learned how to set those boundaries, one, with the operations, but then two, set those boundaries or communicate those boundaries with the clients, right? You set the stuff up, you put the things in place, but then communicating it is a whole nother thing, because now you have to deal with the tensions of the clients.
Yeah, so I'll admit, the first few times that I had to have the conversation to tell the clients about the policy and how our scope of work will go, it was a little bit awkward for me, because I was like, ooh, got to tell them about some extra things. And it's not like it's a hidden fee. I'm very transparent about it, but it was uncomfortable for me to talk about at first. But I knew that if I didn't tell them and if I didn't call it out from the beginning, that I didn't want them to come to me later saying, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. Because, I'm sure we're all guilty of this. We get contracts, we get terms and conditions, and we don't read it. We just scroll down to the bottom. We sign our name, say we read it, we check off that box.
Out the door, out the door, out the door, out the door.
No idea what we just agreed to or what we signed off on. So what I do for my process is, anyone that does say, I want to work with you, I schedule time with them to have a conversation to say, okay, great. I'm so excited. I'm ready to support you. And these are some of the highlights of my contract that I really want to call out that and this is the boundary I put in place. This is how these things look. And it's a verbal conversation we're having. And then I'm like, you will see more details in the contract. So when you're reading through it, you're not surprised. Now, do they read through the whole thing? I don't know. But at least then I had a conversation with them, and then I reiterate that throughout our process. When I'm meeting with them and I'm doing the educational piece before their birth, it's coming up where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing virtual and in-person support, virtual and in-person support. It keeps coming up, the language. And then I remind them again when we're closing out our educational piece of the work before we're going to that on-call period, that this is what this looks like. This is when I come. This is when the fee comes into play and all of those things. And I will let you know, like making sure that they hear it multiple times. And most people are like, all right, cool, no problem. They heard me, they understand. I don't know if it annoys them because I keep bringing it up, but I feel like the more they hear it, so they know, they're not surprised if it were to come up. And then also helps me feel more comfortable talking to people about it, because I was very intentional in bringing it up in multiple milestones throughout our work. So I had to do it. Repetition is key.
For me, it's the word intention, right? Like, I love that you're saying you're being very intentional in multiple ways. How you let people into your space, how people interact with your contracts, how you let people interact with your administrative work, because all of it is an extension of you. And it's how you protect yourself and protect the rest and sustainability that you're creating for yourself in this work. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily think, like, they just use the word sustainability, right? Without realizing that sustainability requires systems. It requires processes. It requires defining, right? And I love that you are, as a practicing doula, right? And someone who's going into the practicing space as an OBGYN, right? You are practicing those boundaries as an extension of who you are, which is just, I always say it to you, I can't say it enough. I'm always so proud to be your friend, because you are modeling the wholeness in action that a lot of people would, they would dream to have, right? Like, they leave their jobs and they're trapped. And nobody, like, people probably are having the conversations, but it's not coming down my timeline about, like, people being trapped within these businesses and feeling like they cannot leave because they're not building sustainable systems for themselves, because that's not what they were taught. They were taught wounded leadership, hence the reason Wounded versus Wholeness Leadership series, right? And I love that you are modeling it in real time. So as we wrap in the last 2 to 3 minutes of this conversation, what are 2 things you want to leave for leaders who has caused wounded leadership, and, unknowingly, because a lot of this stuff is unintentional. And, so that's the first question, 2 things for those leaders. And then what are 2 things for the leaders who have made the transition that you would want them to know and hold with them as they continue to run their businesses and try to build sustainable practices for themselves?
Okay. So for the leaders that have caused wounds, I would say be very reflective, number one. Like, kind of think about what decisions and things that you've said and how that could have landed for someone else. And in your reflection, the second thing is to be intentional. So say you did say something that you thought about later that maybe that didn't sit well with this particular employee, to go back and say to them, this is not what I meant to say. I didn't mean for it to go like that. That wasn't my intention. And as I was thinking about it, I want to either, if it's an apology that needs to be said, or make some clarity or whatever that may be. I think those are 2 things that you could easily do to try to heal any of the disruptions that you might have made in somebody's. And then for those who have already made the transition and are working in that space, I think is to give yourself a lot of grace, because we were in a space that had us in the survival mode. So while we're learning how to live and not just survive, I think giving ourselves lots of grace as we are moving forward and stepping into ourselves as whole leaders. And then the second thing is, I think it's important to have fun. Have some fun with it, makes your friends laugh about it and laugh at yourself, because as we're learning things, we're gonna make lots of mistakes. But I think being able to laugh at yourself and to find things that bring you joy as you're trying to heal internally from the things you've experienced and as you're going out there, I think that will really help.
Oh, well, y'all heard it first, right? I am the CEO of Haven Place Doulas. Be reflective. Reflection is where all the magic happens. It's where you get to see all the best and worst parts of yourself. You know what I mean? And Cheyenne touched on really powerful things, as she always does, right? She always, when I have a conversation with her, it's always very powerful. And she touched on a lot of powerful things in here today, and a lot of great nuggets to take with you as you transition. Be graceful, right, to yourself. Show yourself a lot of compassion, right? Have fun. It's not the end of the world. Okay, you're young, you're living, you're beautiful. It should not be rough all the time. And to the wounded leaders, again, she said be reflective, but then she also said taking that feedback and understanding that that feedback is not something that is being weaponized, right? She's saying take it, sit with it, and say, like, did I mean that? Did that land the way that I want it to land? Because again, we are perfectly imperfect people, and understanding that the person sitting across from you, right, is also a human too. And all of the struggles that you're struggling with, they're struggling with that. No, and also nobody's saying to you to sit in empathy for a million years. We're not saying that. What we're saying is, as you're being empathetic, see the whole human, right? And understand the whole human is integrating wholeness-centered practices as they move through the world. All right. And with that, thank you so much, Cheyenne. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here and doing the live with us. We appreciate you guys for joining us. And again, thank you for being graceful, Cheyenne, showing up with poise as always. And again, thank you.
If you're still watching, then you felt Cheyenne's words right here in your chest. And I know you did. You already know why this conversation actually mattered. Burnout isn't just being tired. It's ghosting yourself while keeping everyone else's world spinning. And the truth is, you don't know how to do that. You absolutely don't. Not for your boss, not for your family, not even for your own ego. So let me leave you with this. Where have you been ghosting yourself lately? And what's one way you're going to try to bring yourself back to you? Drop it in the comments, because I want to hear your story too. Remember, this is a place for the people. And listen, don't just stop here. If the episode gave you something real, hit the like so YouTube knows it. Hit the subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And share this video with the one friend who's been running on fumes, particularly a doula, because we know doula rates are extremely high. That's what Cheyenne said. If you're ready to take a step deeper, go to bicomeye.com and take the leadership assessment. You'll find out the exact pattern you've been carrying, and more importantly, how to shift it, how to become a better version of you. Because remember, she don't work like that no more. Cheyenne's episode brought the truth today, and we've got so much more coming. I'll see you in the next episode, because sis, we don't work like that no more. I'll talk to you soon.